Hello and welcome to the last video in the series of King's Knight's Gambit Abbazia Defense. This is a game played between Swanson and John Nunn in the late 70s. Swanson was white and John Nunn was black. Interesting game. Becomes Abbazia Defense by transposition. So the game went like this. F4, birds opening, E5, Swiss Gambit, E4, E takes F4, that is King's Gambit by transposition, Knight F3, King's Knight's Gambit, D5, Abbazia Defense, E takes D5, Knight F6. We saw in the previous videos that this move is better than Knight E7, Bishop B5, C6, defending against the check, D takes C6, and now John Nunn chooses here to take with the knight instead of the pawn, as we saw in the previous video. Knight takes C6. Now, if you see here, if you pause for a moment and look at the board, you can see that black has developed his pieces very nicely. Both his knights are resting on ideal squares from where they have access to the center of the board, and can jump to any of these squares. Also, we see that the files have been ripped open, so this is a completely open file, the E file. We have, from black's perspective, a semi-open D file. We have a semi-open C file, and the B file is going to be opened very soon, and the rook can come to it. This bishop here already has this diagonal available to him. This one has this diagonal. So both bishops, although in their home ranks, have some mobility available to them, and can come into the play very quickly. From white's perspective, we have the semi-open F file. And so the three basic rules of Gambit play, which is to open up the files as soon as possible, to develop your pieces rapidly to the best available squares, and to not to lose initiative, have been utilized by John Nunn in this game. And black has a superior position, in my opinion, at this moment in game. If we look at white, we can see that most of his pieces are blocked in. Both rooks are locked. This knight has yet to find an ideal square, and the only square available to this knight is C3 at the moment. This bishop is locked in badly. Queen has a diagonal available to it, but is blocked by the knight here, and so its mobility is limited. This knight, however, is placed relatively better and has some access to the center of the board. But other than that, white is in a pretty bad shape. So there is no point in playing a gambit line if you're not going to develop your pieces rapidly. The game continued. After knight takes c6, queen e2, check, bishop e7, blocks, d4, and this is one of the main ideas in King's Knight's Gambit, or in King's Gambit generally, to push up the d pawn to 4th rank, as we've seen previously as well. Castle's short, bishop takes c6, and b takes c6, castles. Now, after castling, this is the middle game now, and in middle game as well, you can see that black pieces have more mobility than the white's pieces, and they are placed better on the board. Bishop g4, pinning the queen Queen c4 breaking the pin, bishop d6, knight c3, rook c8, king h1. King h1 move is probably a preemption of these two batteries here. So a silent but good move by Swanson. Knight d5, ideal square for the bishop, for the knight, I'm sorry. Knight's potential is maximized on this square. This is, of course, realized by Swanson, and he takes. Nunn brings his bishop to e6, pinning the queen, and so queen d3 breaks the pin. Otherwise, he would have a problem. C takes d5. So Nunn here takes the knight back. c3, f6, bishop d2, queen d7, and with each move you can see that black is developing his pressure on the white side. b3, bishop f5, queen a6, g5, rook a e1, bishop e4, queen a5, queen f5, bishop c1, rook f e8, c4, d takes c4, queen takes f5, bishop takes f5. This is now the end game with the queens coming off the board. And we can see that, we can see clearly black has a pawn's advantage. He's a pawn up. And at the same time, there are two bishops of black versus a knight and a bishop of white, which in theory is always better. It's better to have two bishops against a knight and a bishop. Also, we can see that black's pieces are well placed, are better placed, more dynamically placed, and Nunn has a better chance at winning this game. Rook takes e8, rook takes back, b takes c4, bishop d3, rook e1, rook takes e1, knight takes e1. Now Nunn realizes that with this exchange of rooks, he's forcing white to take back with the knight, and e1 is a very bad square for knight, and he's forced into a defensive position. Bishop takes c4, a3, king f7, now kings come into the play, king g1, this is the end game now, king e6, king f2, king d5, bishop b2, bishop c7, king f3, h5, h3. So blocking always for the king. f5, knight c2, g4, king f2, a5, king e1, bishop b3, knight a1. I'm sorry, knight a1 move was not played in the actual game. I was just looking at some continuations. Bishop b3. And white resigns here. Swanson lost the game. And you can clearly see why. You know, this pawn here, white pawn, the only passed pawn, has no defenders left. And the knight is under attack currently. The knight, though, can move to the only available square a1, which is a pretty bad square for the knight, to say the least. This bishop can come back to c4. At the same time, there's also the law of two weaknesses coming into play very soon. These two pawns are going towards f1 square to be promoted. You know, if g takes h3, then g takes h3, and these two pawns are passed pawns. These are backed up by this bishop, which can come up to both these diagonals. And very soon, the bishop first can come to the b6 square and attack this pawn here, get rid of it, exchanging the pair of bishops, exchanging these two bishops. And this bishop here on b3 can move back. And at some point, when this pawn here on f4 has been pushed up to f3, this bishop can come here and influence lots of squares from here. So this was an interesting game that I thought I'd share with you. Thank you for watching all my videos, and in the next video we'll start looking at the Quaid Gambit.